His Excellency the Governor of Imo State is here represented by the Honorable Commissioner of Finance and Coordination of the Economy, Dr. Doris Anita. Please put your hands together for her. You're very much welcome. Up next is a video on the Nigerian economic landscape, key events of 2022. Please watch.
The Nigerian banking industry is more resilient and innovative in the period under review, despite the macroeconomic pressures such as rising inflation, exchange rate fluctuations, amongst others. The regulators have been relatively proactive in designing initiatives to boost the real sector of the economy and national productivity, especially in the manufacturing and agriculture sectors. The global economy slowed down from 6.1% in 2021 to 3.2% in 2022, according to the International Monetary Fund (IMF). Aggregate global debt hit $305 trillion in Q1 2022, with a record rise of $3.3 trillion. This is largely attributed to the United States of America and China's share of $1.5 trillion and $2.5 trillion respectively, according to the International Institute of Finance 2022. The fallout from COVID-19 pandemic and Russian invasion of Ukraine has significantly slowed down the 2022 global economic prospect, with attendant risk of stagflation. The Nigerian economy continues to be more resilient and agile, as shown in the growth rate of 3.11% and 3.54% in Q1 2022 and Q2 2022 respectively. Nigeria is currently the sixth most populated country in the world, estimated at 216.7 million in July 2022, according to the United Nations. Portfolio investment accounted for 49.33%. Other investments and foreign direct investments accounted for 41.09% and 9.58% respectively. The banking sector has the highest share of total capital importation, 42.1% in Q2 2022. Key developments in the Nigerian banking industry. The Central Bank of Nigeria, CBN, released the guidelines for the implementation of the 100 for 100 policy for production and productivity, 100 for 100 PPP, to stimulate investments in the manufacturing sector and create opportunities for 100 private sector players who have access to finance, growth and expansion initiatives on a quarterly basis. The CBN issued a Customer Bill of Rights that encompasses the right to choose, be informed, safety, privacy and confidentiality, redress, equality and good service. The CBN introduced RT200 programs to stabilize the foreign exchange and raise $200 billion in earnings from non-oil foreign exchange inflow within the next 3 to 5 years. The Apex Bank issued a new regulation in response to the emerging trends and development in combating money laundering, financing terrorism, and countering proliferation of weapons of mass destruction in financial institutions. The CBN plans to redesign, produce, release, and circulate new series of 200, 500, and 1,000 Naira banknotes to mop up excess liquidity in circulation, which is estimated at 2.73 trillion Naira, and also stymie cash driven by predicate of financial crimes. The usage of the new currencies will kick off on December 15, 2022, after its launch by the President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Muhammadu Buhari, GCFR. The Apex Bank increased the monetary policy rate (MPR) by 450 basis points in the last 3 monetary policy reviews, from 11.5% to 13% in May, 14% in July, and 15.5% in September. The regulator also increased the cash reserve ratio, CRR, to 32.5% as part of its efforts to curb inflation and domestic currency depreciation, as well as the use of development finance tools to support the agriculture and manufacturing sectors. Activities of the Chartered Institute of Bankers of Nigeria in 2022. Significant activities recorded by the Institute in the year under review are as follows. Statutory program initiatives. Economic outlook. The activities of the year started with the 8th National Economic Outlook session with theme Implications for Businesses in Nigeria in 2022 on January 18, 2022, in collaboration with B.A. Adedigbe and Associates and chaired by Dr. Jumoke Odumole, Special Advisor to the President on Ease of Doing Business, Commissioning of the Bankers House Abuja. The CIBN Bankers House Abuja was commissioned on 3rd March 2022 by the Vice President, Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osinbajo, SAN, GCON, and is being used as a CIBN Annex Office and Secretariat of the Alliance of African Institutes of Bankers, AAIOB, an association of all banking institutes in Africa. AGM and 2022 elections. The 2022 Annual General Meeting AGM was held on Saturday, 9th April 2022. The highlight of the event was the announcement of results of elections conducted through electronic means for the positions of the President, Chairman of Council, other office holders, and elected council members. The following were declared as winners for their respective positions. 22nd President, Chairman of Council, Ken Okwara, PhD, FCIB. First Vice President, Professor Deji Olanrewaju, PhD, FCIB. Second Vice President, Mr. Dele Alabi, FCIB. National Treasurer, Mrs. Mojisola Bakari, FCIB. Valedictory Address. On Friday, May 20, 2022, the immediate past President, Chairman of Council, Dr. Bayo Oluwemi, FCIB, delivered his valedictory address titled Entrepreneurship, Innovation and Disruption in the Nigerian Banking Industry. What next? Investiture ceremony. Dr. Ken Okwara, FCIB, was sworn in as the 22nd President, Chairman of Council at an investiture ceremony held on Saturday, May 21, 2022 at the Landmark Center. During the ceremony, he presented the 6 key strategic pillars with the acronym FUTURE, which will be focused on during his tenure. Dr. Okwara believed that the future is here, and we either embrace, shape it, or it will take us unaware and possibly out of relevance. 15th Annual CIBN Banking and Finance Conference. The 15th Annual CIBN Banking and Finance Conference was held from the 13th to 14th of September 2022 at the Transport Hilton Hotel, Abuja, with a total of 5,500 online and 1,002 physical participants. During the event, research on analysis of human capital attrition in an evolving global context, a case study of the Nigerian banking industry was presented. The project was positively received, leading to the institutionalization of a $20 million Human Capital Retention Fund, HCRF, local and international partnerships. CIBN LBS partnership. FinTech collaboration. PACS agreement. Legacy projects. As part of the Institute's efforts in strengthening and deepening banking and finance education in Nigeria, 160-seater lecture theatre legacy projects were embarked upon in 7 tertiary institutions in 6 geopolitical zones of the country. The institutions selected based on their performances in the linkage arrangements with the institutes are Rivers State University, Federal Polytechnic Nasarawa, Kano State Polytechnic, Federal Polytechnic Nekede, the Polytechnic Ibadan, Abubakar Tafawa Baloyi University, and Olabisi Onabanjo University. Indeed, the year 2022 proved to be an eventful one. As we progress towards 2023, we look forward to more growth in the banking industry and economy overall. The best is yet to come.
Thank you for that applause in response to that beautiful theme. At this juncture, Excellencies, very distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to recognize our fathers in the house, I mean the past presidents. Please join me as we recognize Mr. Ralph Akosayami, FCIB, Mr. Femi Ekundayo, FCIB, Professor Wale Adewumi, FCIB, Dr. Shegun Aino, FCIB, Professor Shegun Ajibola, FCIB, Dr. Uche Olowu, FCIB, and Dr. Bayo Olubemi, FCIB. All right, we are approaching a very key aspect of the program now, and it's my pleasure to kindly invite to come to the stage the Chairman, Ad Hoc Committee on Annual Bankers Dinner, Chairman, Body of Bank CEOs, Group Managing Director, Zenith Bank PLC. Please make welcome Mr. Ebenezer Onyagu, FCIB. Please give him a resounding, resonating, and reverberating round of applause.
I would like to check our program with
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I think it's very safe for me to stand on the already established protocol. And when we were in secondary school, there was an exam that was set, and it was about write about the life and times of Jesus Christ. And there's this classmate, what he prepared was the life and times of John the Baptist. So he got to the hall, he saw the question paper, he looked left, he looked right, he just said, I have to write something. And started with the intro. Who am I? The son of a sinner, born by a sinner, living in sin, to write about my Lord and Savior Jesus Christ. Instead, let me write on John the Baptist. So, I'm sure my colleagues here will know that who am I? A man under authority who runs away from fines here and there to talk about the governor of Central Bank. Therefore, I'm going to hide under an immunity I found last year. Last year, when we had the annual bankers conference, we had the pleasure of having the personality of His Excellency, the Vice President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, Professor Yemi Osibanjo. And he told us a story that a particular year, a few days to celebration of the independence, that he was in London and he asked his aides to go out and look for ring ties. Something that he wanted to wear, something that would depict the color of the nation. He said they came back, they couldn't find any green tie in the whole of London, the city of London. that he now asked what happened. Well, the aide said, well, they said there was a certain man from Nigeria who came and bought all the green cards. I said, who is that man? He said, I don't know his name, but I understand he's the governor of Central Bank. And speaking seriously, ladies and gentlemen, color green represents life, vitality, resourcefulness, renewal, rebirth. So you agree with me if you look at the personality of the central bank governor and his aspiration and initiative, they find very unique expression in what green represents. So it's my singular honor and pleasure to bring to the podium our evergreen governor of the Central Bank of Nigeria, Mr. Godwin Emefiele, CON FCIB. I can't hear the applause. I can't hear the applause. Make it louder. Make it louder.
Thank you very much. Please be seated. I would just like to recognize our elder statesmen, our past presidents of the Chartered Institute of Bankers. This evening, and I know that several state governors are here represented by their state commissioners, and after that, please permit me to rest on already established protocol, because it took almost 5 minutes for the president and chairman of council to recognize all of us here, and I thought I should just shoot straight this evening. Good evening, distinguished ladies and gentlemen. It is indeed a great pleasure again to be with you all this evening and to once again savor the merry ambience of another convivial dinner aimed at sharing with our peers, colleagues, and stakeholders in the Nigerian financial system. Usually when we hold this dinner, it reminds me that we worked so hard, and I think it is time to begin to wind down for the year. So you'll find that after this weekend, several people will begin to go on vacation and then rest. So that shows that we really worked hard and we do deserve some rest. As I always maintain, banquets like these are valuable occasions for us to momentarily recoil from the day-to-day concerns of inflation, recession, and foreign exchange, and to ultimately rethink the long-term factors shaping our economy. But first, let me thank the leadership of the Chartered Institute of Bankers, led by Dr. Ken Okpara, the president of the institute, Dr. Sheya Ojobi, I understand there's a news registrar now, along with their team for their diligence at putting this event together this evening. Also, I'm immensely grateful to the managing directors of our banks and other financial institutions, as well as my colleagues from the Central Bank of Nigeria, and this would include our deputy governors and other senior management of the bank who have all found time to be here today. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, as we are all aware, the world is undergoing several social and macroeconomic challenges as the last few years cannot, by any stretch of the imagination, be described as normal, following the series of headwinds that has resulted in a downward revision of the global growth outlook for 2022 and 2023 by the IMF. It is in light of these disruptions that the theme for today's event, radical responses to abnormal episodes, time for innovative decision making, is appropriate and well timed. During the early part of 2020, the world economy experienced the most significant downturn last witnessed since the Great Depression, following the outbreak of COVID-19 pandemic, the effect of which contracted global GDP by about 3.1% in 2020. Commodity prices went into a state of turmoil as the price of crude oil plunged by over 70%. In addition, there was a significant outflow of funds from emerging markets and developing economies like Nigeria, as investors sought safe havens assets like US Treasury bills. This aggravated financial conditions in developing markets, leading to the depletion of external reserves and the weakening of the currencies of a significant number of emerging market countries, including Nigeria. In a bid to contain the effects of the pandemic, unprecedented measures were taken which involved a significant amount of fiscal and monetary stimulus to contain the effects of the pandemic. These measures helped to support a swift rebound in global growth in 2021. However, the swift rebound is now being constrained by the significant supply disruptions in key producing nations like China, as factories now struggle to meet the upsurge in global demand, along with other bottlenecks such as inadequate ships and containers to convey goods. This has resulted in a hike in freight rates from key producing nations like China and ultimately an uptick in imported inflation. As the world struggles to recover to pre-pandemic conditions, the global economy was yet again hit by another adverse occurrence with the eruption of the Russia and Ukraine war. The war, along with the sanctions placed on Russia by the US and its allies, led to a spike in crude oil prices. Given the dominant role Russia plays as a key energy producer, energy prices spiked to over $120 per barrel in March 2022 from a low of $14 per barrel in April 2020. In addition, Russia and Ukraine's control of a significant share of wheat and fertilizer market in the global market aggravated food prices. What were the global responses? In the attempt to contain the rising inflation, advanced markets such as the US began to increase their policy rates, which led to a tightening of global financial market conditions, along with a significant outflow of funds from emerging market economies. The subsequent strengthening of the US dollar further aggravated inflationary pressures, along with the weakening of currencies and depletion of external reserves in many emerging market countries. Today, close to 80% of countries have reported heightened inflationary pressures due to a confluence of some of the factors mentioned above. Central banks in emerging markets and developing economies, in a bid to contain rising inflation, were also compelled to raise rates, which is expected to lead to a tapering of global growth over the next years. In fact, the short-term global growth projections by the IMF have been downgraded 3 times in 2022 and is likely to be below 3.2% and 2.7% estimates for 2022 and 2023 respectively. Average growth among advanced economies is projected to plunge from 5.2% in 2021 to 2.4% in 2022 and 1.1% in 2023. Estimated output growth in emerging markets is expected to slow from 6.6% in 2021 to 3.7% apiece in 2022 and 2023. Today, in view of the food, energy, and cost of living crisis in many countries, we are witnessing growing restrictions on food exports from many countries. As at the last count, about 23 countries, mainly in advanced economies, according to the World Bank, have banned the export of 33 food items. 7 other countries have additionally implemented various measures to limit food exports. To combat the debilitating energy crisis due to the war in Ukraine, the European Union has developed plans to impose energy price caps, which has sparked Russia's threat to cut off gas supplies. Germany is resorting to coal in an attempt, in an excruciating U-turn to its planned swift transition to green energy. Let us situate this dilemma in a constructual format. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, these tumultuous external conditions reinforced by the anomalous, sometimes chaotic responses by many countries for both spillover shocks for Nigeria. Again, this underscores our chosen theme and the need to ingeniously think outside the box for solutions and countervailing measures. At this juncture, let me put the situation into perspective as I recall the story of a young lady, her poor father, and a despicable moneylender. A long time ago, a poor farmer named Feng, a Chinese, lived in a small Chinese neighborhood and owed money which he could not repay to a local moneylender. Unfortunately, the loan shark, who was old and ugly, fancied the farmer's gorgeous daughter called May. As such, he crafted a devious scheme to bring his despicable purpose to fruition. The hideous moneylender proposed to forego Mr. Feng's debt in return for marrying his daughter May, the farmer's beautiful daughter. Neither the farmer nor his daughter could conceal their disgust at this repulsive proposition by the moneylender. Sensing his victim's reluctance and in his scheming cruelty, the crafty moneylender demanded that they allow fate to determine the matter. He proposed to put a black pebble and a white pebble into an empty opaque leather sack, one of which pebble the beautiful girl May must then randomly pick from the bag. By his evil plot, if May picked the black pebble, she would become his wife, and her father's death would be instantly and entirely cancelled. However, if she happened to select the white pebble, she would be free not to marry him, and her father's death would still be forgiven. But if she failed to pick any of the two pebbles, her father's death would be upheld, and her defaulting father would be thrown into jail. Wow. What an agonizingly grim moment for May and her poor father, who at this point had realized how precarious their options were and how appalling the moneylender is. They had no choice but to accept the devious man's plan and leave their fate to providence. As they stood discussing the pebble-strewn path along the farmer's field, the moneylender bent down to pick up 2 pebbles. The smart and eagle-eyed girl noticed that the wicked loan shark had deceitfully placed 2 black pebbles in the bag instead of 1 white and 1 black as agreed. Not realizing that his malicious act was spotted, the dubious old man then asked the girl to pick a pebble from that bag. What a truly precarious situation the girl found herself. She was confronted with a gravely anomalous predicament, whilst her father remained innocently oblivious of the real extent of the impending male violence. Now, imagine that you were the one standing in the field. What would you have done if you were the girl? If you were to advise her, what would you have told her? How should she deal with this abnormal, tricky, and potentially doomed option? Now, a quick reflection indicates 3 possible responses by the girl. First, in remonstration of the man's dishonesty, she could refuse to pick a pebble. Secondly, she could show that there were 2 black pebbles in the bag and expose the moneylender as a cheat. Finally, she could, out of fear, naively pick the black pebble and sacrifice herself in order to save her father from imprisonment. But any of these 3 options would have untold repercussions. After all, her father is a defaulting borrower. The lady needed to find a non-confrontational, non-abrasive, and smooth solution to her dilemma. I will pause the story here for us to contemplate the resolution of this puzzle. The foregoing story aims to highlight the difference between lateral thinking, that is imaginative, and logical thinking, which is common sense here. The girl's predicament cannot be solved with traditional actions, which is conventional actions or conventional policies, especially in view of the steep consequences of the 3 logical possibilities that confronted her. Ladies and gentlemen, the predicament confronting this lady in the story parallel those beleaguering our domestic economy today in Nigeria. Given Nigeria's fundamental vulnerabilities, it is imperative to find sustainable ways of insulating the economy from continued exogenous challenges. In addition to the relentless waves of abnormal shocks that is battering the global economy, domestic conditions are exposed to spillovers from the repulsive actions in some key economies. It therefore behoves us to adequately identify and understand the key implications of these undercurrents on the Nigerian economy. Unfortunately, the Nigerian economy was not insulated from the spillover effects of these external shocks, though some of the actions taken by our monetary and fiscal authorities have helped to cushion its effect on our economy. Based on this, the economy has remained resilient in the face of enormous vulnerabilities. And following the brief recession during the second quarter of 2020, our economy has recorded 8 consecutive quarters of positive output, with domestic growth rates improving from negative of 1.92% in 2020 to 3.4% in 2021 and further to 3.54% during the second quarter of 2022. This performance reflected the sustained buoyancy of the domestic non-oil sector, which continued to record growth since the fourth quarter of 2020, recovering from the negative 1.25% in 2020 to 4.77% during the second quarter of 2022. Performance of the non-oil sector reflects the impact of policy supports to households, MSMEs, and other high-impact economic sectors through various CBN interventions. Specifically, we have seen a strengthening of the agriculture and services sectors, which have continued to propel domestic growth rates throughout this period, while the oil sector has continued to flounder, with growth rate plunging to negative of 11.77% during the second quarter of 2022. Our agri sector remained the critical factor behind the continued resilience of the domestic economy. This is an affirmation of the success of the CBN's development finance initiatives in the non-oil sector, particularly in the agri sector, which has helped to boost domestic output and create jobs locally. Is there any way we can tell the people who are beating the drums to help us, please? While global development steadily drove crude oil prices upwards in 2022, Nigeria's oil sector performance has been abysmal. This reflected the country's inability to meet its meager production quota, as recorded domestic crude oil production plunged from over 1.9 million barrels per day as of April 2020 to 1.1 million barrels per day by the September 2022. Given our dependence on crude oil for close to 80% of our foreign exchange earnings, the drop in production has resulted in a significant drop in our foreign exchange earnings as well as government revenue. It is imperative that we diversify away from the oil sector to reduce our exposures to the vulnerabilities associated with dependence on revenues from the sale of crude oil. On inflation, upside pressure on consumer inflation re-emerged during the year as global conditions complicated existing local imbalances to undermine price stability. After a successive period of decline in 2021 due to balanced monetary policy actions, domestic inflation rate commenced an upward momentum in 2022, consistent with global trends. From 15.6% in January 2022, headline inflation surged to 20.7% in September 2022, indicating 8 consecutive months of uptick. Food remains a major component of domestic consumer price basket. The analyzed uptick in headline inflation mirrors the 6.21% points upsurge in food inflation to 23.3% in September. During this period, core inflation also resumed an upward movement from 13.87% in January 2022 to 17.6%. In addition to the harsh global spillovers, exchange rate adjustments and imported inflation was also driven by local factors such as farmers' herders clashes in parts of the food belts of the country. Noting the adverse effects of spiraling inflation on the inertia and expectations, the CBN understands the need for supply-side interventions in critical sectors to minimize excess demand gaps. In terms of the real sector indicators, key indices present mixed outcomes in the real sector activities regarding industries, manufacturing, agriculture, mining, and electricity production. Purchasing Managers Index suggests fragile resilience of the domestic economy as tight global conditions and rising inflationary pressures weigh down domestic economic activities. Composite PMI contracted from 50 points in June 2022 to 49.5 points in September 2022, dragged by the weakness in both PMIs for industry and services. Our manufacturing sector, MSMEs, and the services sector need to be reinforced, not only to support in domestic needs, but also to become internationally competitive. This is in view of the massive supply chain disruptions that expose the dependence and vulnerabilities of many EMDEs. As illustrated by the credit to gross domestic ratio, this phenomenal growth is not normal, but rather deep-rooted support of the real sector. As a ratio of GDP, credit to core real sector grew from 9.4% in 2018 to almost 15% as of September 2022. It is our objective that we gradually drive this ratio above 50% to ensure adequate support of the real sector activities in Nigeria. Now on the banking sector. Notwithstanding the global headwinds, our banking sector continues to remain sound and accommodative of growth. NPL ratios are currently under 5%, and the capital adequacy and liquidity ratios are above the prudential requirements at 13% and 40% respectively. We intend to continue to maintain strong oversight of our banking institutions to quickly identify any vulnerabilities and ensure that banks take suitable measures to mitigate any potential risk. On foreign exchange, the drop in oil receipts, along with tightening of global financial market conditions, have weighed heavily on our foreign exchange markets. The downward short-run trend of the external reserves reappeared at the beginning of 2022. Accordingly, after recovery from $33.7 billion in March 2020 to $41.6 in September 2021, official reserves fell to about $37 billion as at October 2022. At approximately 6.4 months, import cover in October remained above the traditional 3-month threshold. This reflected the massive demand pressure mounted on the foreign exchange market as import appetite remained high vis-à-vis available foreign reserves. During this period, foreign exchange market developments exerted considerable pressure on the naira to dollar exchange rate, notwithstanding the enormous efforts of the CBN to stabilize the foreign exchange rate. Over the medium term, the incessant demand pressures at the foreign exchange market moved the exchange rate from about 381 naira to the dollar at the end of 2020 to 416 in January 2022 and further to over 440 today. Capital flows. With the upsurge in global inflation, which have reached record heights in advanced countries, the ensuing global monetary tightening is threatening global macroeconomic conditions. In Nigeria, this threat is considerably muted due to a low appetite of capital flows since 2020. Monthly average capital outflows from Nigeria year to date is less than 1/3 of its value in 2019, having declined from $1.37 billion monthly to just $580 million monthly in 2022. It is thus imperative for us to ensure, through innovative inward-looking structural policies, that we find sustainable ways of adequately insulating our economy from the volatility associated with foreign portfolio flows. What were the countervailing policy measures? Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, the prevailing circumstances prevent a dilemma for policymakers. Higher inflation needs to be tackled with tools that can potentially constrain our fragile output growth and cause us stagflation. At the CBN, this pursuit of a balanced mix of established and unconventional policy measures remains the crux of our macroeconomic management strategy, and to forestall any harmful future impact, the CBN took and will continue to take proactive measures for the good of our economy. Some of the countervailing measures we took over the past few months to chart a path for sustainable advancements are listed hereunder. On monetary policy, after a prolonged period of monetary policy accommodation aimed at supporting the productive sector of the Nigerian economy, Monetary Policy Committee of the CBN reconsidered its stance as inflationary pressures resurfaced. Consequently, with the resumed uptick of inflation rate in February 2022, the Monetary Policy Committee has raised its policy rates 4 times, from 11.5% to 16.5% in November 2022. With the cumulative hike of 500 basis points so far in 2022, we are confident of an ensuing period of sustained disinflation. The cycle of monetary tightening could, however, impinge on growth momentum if adequate supportive and structural measures are not quickly implemented. On foreign exchange management, the Nigerian foreign exchange market is in the middle of serious crunch, which are straining our reserves and stifling the value of our naira. Market demand for both goods and invisible transactions has continued to increase under various uses in the face of dwindling supply of foreign exchange. As we all know, for example, the official exchange receipt from crude oil sales into our official reserves has dried up steadily from above $3 billion monthly in 2014 to absolutely $0 today. To put this drawback into perspective, it is equally no news that the number of student visas issued to the Nigerians by the UK alone has increased from an annual average of about 8,000 visas as of 2020 to nearly 66,000 in 2022, which implies an 8-fold surge to about $2.5 billion annually in study-related foreign exchange outflows out of Nigeria to the United Kingdom alone. This is against the backdrop of the worsening mismatch between foreign exchange market demand and supply, and the need to boost foreign exchange earnings that the CBN and the Bankers Committee initiated the RT200 program in February 2022. The program was fundamentally devised to innovatively tackle the fundamental problem associated with the repatriation of non-oil export process. So far, we have recorded and continue to record resounding success with the RT200 program, and inflows through this program in 2022 rose to about $1.6 billion and could surpass $2.5 billion by the end of the year. Under our rebate scheme of the program, the CBN has reimbursed a total of 78.4 billion naira, which I consider a fair price to incur in order to stabilize our exchange rate. Prior to RT200 program, the CBN had also rolled out several initiatives to bolster the inflow of foreign exchange into Nigeria in a stable and sustainable manner. One of these, as you may recollect, is the Naira for Dollar scheme This initiative reflects our efforts to boost migrant remittances into the Nigerian economy. I'm happy to note that so far the Naira for Dollar scheme has been successful in increasing remittance inflows through our registered IMTUs. Currency redesign or currency repainting. Based on the ever-escalating challenges that are inundating currency management in Nigeria, with grim consequences for our sovereign integrity, the CBN recently announced its policy to issue newly redesigned or repainted Nigerian banknotes. Analysis of the key challenges primarily indicate a significant hoarding of banknotes, as over 85% of currency in circulation were held outside the banking industry. This is even as currency in circulation more than doubled from 1.46 trillion in December 2015 to 3.23 trillion in September 2022, a worrisome trend that must be curbed. Whilst the global best practice is to undertake currency redesign every 5 to 8 years, our existing banknotes have remained unchanged in almost 20 years. It is therefore no longer tenable to continue with business as usual, especially given the continually evolving circumstances that could impinge the optimal performance of the Naira. And let me say this. After the 26th of October 2022, when we announced the approvals given by the President for redesigning the Naira, I have watched with interest analysts on TV and radio criticize this policy. I have often said this, that the central bank is a resource center. The Central Bank of Nigeria is a resource institution. We have data, and we pride ourselves on the data that we have at Central Bank. Some have said yes, it will not have any effect on inflation. Some have said it will not have effect on exchange rate. Some have said different things. But I think what is important is for us to know that there is no country in the world today that has allowed its currency to remain unchanged, whether through what you call restructuring or what you call repainting. It is not possible. And what you will find in every country is that maximum between 5 to 8 years, all currencies in circulation will gradually be withdrawn and new ones will be issued for good purpose. And for us in Nigeria, we have highlighted those purposes, that we want monetary policy to be more efficacious. We want to stop hoarding of currency in houses. We want to stop what is happening about banditry and terrorism in Nigeria, because people find it comfortable to carry dollar and naira cash, carry cash into the bush. Most of the countries of the world today have embraced cashless. Nigeria is one country, I don't want to say one of those, is one country that has refused to embrace a cashless economy or a cashless system of doing business. That is the reason we have said it, that Post this reissuance of these notes, Nigerians will see less cash in circulation. We would like to encourage people, whether it is repainting or restructuring. The important thing is that there is a purpose for repainting the naira. In any case, whether you repaint or you restructure, it will end up in one color. In this case, whether it is blue, or it is green, or it is red for the 200. But there is a purpose behind this. And I'd like to appeal to Nigerians to understand the purpose and reason behind this. And not about the semantics of whether we restructured or whether we repainted. But I want to warn you that if you are carrying any cash, the one that is not painted, I will advise you, take it to your banks. Make sure that you return that cash to your bank and collect the one that has blue or the one that is painted green or red. If you refuse, after we have given you 100 days, because even if you are depositing your old currency, the unpainted one, every day for 100 days, you will finish depositing it. Please deposit your money, because by 31st of December, 31st of January 2023, only the painted one is what is useful. All those unpainted ones, you will have to burn them. There have been attempts in the past to resist this. And I'm not going to hold back on thanking the president. And I have said that it takes a president of his esteem and incorruptible statute to give those approvals. Because I know how even me, I have been confronted and resisted in the past not to do this. But because of an understanding and agreement between the federal government and the CBN, we have moved forward on this repainting. So please, Nigerians, embrace repainting. Because my color is going to change from what it is to blue, because I've seen 2 shades of me. By after January 31, 2023, you only see me painted blue. So that is the advice, because it's for good reasons. It is against this backdrop and congruence with relevant sections of the CBN Act 2007 that CBN sought and obtained the approval of President Muhammadu Buhari to repaint the 200 naira, 500 naira, and 1,000 naira notes. These policies will quicken the attainment of cashless economy as it is complemented by increased minting of our e-naira. It will curtail currency outside the banking system, and as monetary policy becomes more efficacious, will help to rein in inflation. On digital money and payments, given the rapid advancement in financial technology, leading to rapid digitization, money and finance, the CBN will continue to seek creative ways to ensure that Nigeria takes full advantage of its opportunities and benefits, leading to the recent launch of the e-naira. The e-naira was developed to broaden the payment possibilities of Nigerians, foster digital financial inclusion, with potential for fast-tracking intergovernmental and social transfers. Since its launch a year ago, we have continually modified its features and have made it more accessible to a wide range of users. To further strengthen the payment system while conserving foreign exchange, the CBN is collaborating with NIT to launch the Nigerian National Domestic Card Scheme. This is expected to lower operating costs for banks, incurring new charges for foreign cards schemes. It will also reduce the huge foreign exchange commitments associated with operating foreign card schemes. The scheme is expected to commence on 16th of January 2023. With this, Nigeria will join a growing list of EMDs, including India, Turkey, China, and Brazil, that have launched their own domestic card schemes. This landmark initiative shall position Nigeria as the first African country to introduce a domestic card scheme that combines a fully domestic infrastructure with international interoperability. I will skip development finance. We know what we have all done in agriculture. As part of efforts to resuscitate Nigeria's textile industry and promote economic development in textile and garment sector, the bank released about 1.5 billion under the textile sector intervention, bringing the total disbursements to about 97 billion naira. And in support of the resilience of our healthcare sector, the CBN also has so far disbursed a total of 130 billion naira to 131 projects comprising 32 pharmaceuticals, 60 hospitals, and 39 other services. Now, let's compare Nigeria with other markets. An analysis of our recovery efforts and current outcomes suggests that the Nigerian economy and its banking system has fared comparably well when juxtaposed with our peers. Like many emerging market and developing economies, Nigeria's GDP growth rate has so far remained positive, even as global conditions plunge deeper into stormy waters. Inflation rates among comparator economies have, however, soared in consonance with global trends. And the quick comparison of the rates, for instance, for September 2022, indicates that Nigeria's inflation at 20.77% is high, but not among the worst in the world. We have seen hyperinflations above 80% in Turkey and Argentina. Ghana and Ethiopia also had rates of above 30%. Interestingly, in terms of the pace of inflation acceleration, Nigeria's inflation is among the lowest, as inflation grew from about 16% in October 2021 to 21.9% in October 2022. Over the same interval, Morocco's inflation rate rose fivefold, from 1.7% to 8.3%. The rate in Ghana rose more than threefold, from 11% to 37.2%. We are not trying to justify our position. It's weak, but we're only saying that this is a global trend, and we're doing everything possible for us in Nigeria to correct our situation. Our outlook for 2023. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, the short-term outlook of the global economy is increasingly bleak, as lingering effects of the pandemic-induced supply chain disruptions and economic fragmentation is worsened by the uncertainties triggered by the eruption of the Russian-Ukraine war. Accordingly, the IMF projects that more than a third of the global economies will suffer a recession within the next 2 years, especially as the US, European Union, and Chinese economies they stagnate. In emerging markets, Growth forecasts have been revised downwards for China, for India, Mexico, Turkey, and South Africa, reflecting country-specific factors, uncertainties in the financial market conditions, and rising spillover effects of global geopolitical tensions. As external conditions flounders, inflationary pressure is expected to worsen and become even more persistent in many countries going forward. The rate in key advanced economies is projected to remain historically elevated at double-digit levels up to the third quarter of 2023 at the earliest. As such, tight monetary conditions will remain prevalent over the short term, straining financial markets in many emerging markets and developing economies, and exacerbating the underlying vulnerabilities. Considering the current developments in both the global and domestic economies, and based on extensive simulations, the CBN is of the view that the short-term outlook of the Nigerian economy remains good. We expect that on monetary policy, over the coming years, monetary policy will remain focused on the objectives of price, monetary, and exchange rate stability. Our policy stance will accordingly remain tight to curtail inflation pressure, regulate capital flows, and buoy the naira-dollar exchange rate. Monetary policy decisions will remain balanced, will be judicious, research-driven, adequate and supportive of our real sector of the economy, subject to our underlying fundamentals. We will continue the current tight monetary policy stance in the near term, especially in view of rising inflation expectations and exchange market pressures. Although we will act to appropriately adjust the policy rate in line with unfolding conditions and outlooks. On GDP, based on the expectation of a robust non-oil performance and barring any unforeseen shocks, GDP growth rate is projected to remain positive in the remaining quarter of 2022 and during 2023. The performance of the non-oil sectors will be buoyed by the continued efforts at entrenching indigenous productivity in high-impact real sector activities, especially agriculture and small and medium enterprises. Domestic aggregate demand is further expected to be bolstered by the anticipated budgetary outlay and the surge of electioneering spending in the next few months. From 3.54% in the quarter 2 of 2022, growth is projected to attain 3.7% during the third quarter and 3.47% during the fourth quarter. On inflation expectations are rising as existing structural rigidities are compounded by global factors and anticipated elections-related liquidity upsurge. For the rest of 2022 and towards the mid-2023, Nigeria's rate of inflation is projected to remain elevated and above 12.5% growth aiding threshold. However, on the backdrop of our previous policy measures, and as the effect continues to permeate the system, our in-house model-based simulations indicate that inflation rate could fall steadily to less than 15% during the end of 2023. On exchange rate, although the CBN has so far managed to maintain exchange rate stability, the current capital flow reversals from emerging markets are expected to continue to exert considerable pressure on our markets. This pressure could be amplified by the forthcoming elections, especially as the political market space heats up. Notwithstanding these pressures, the CBN is determined to maintain its stable exchange policy stance over the next few months through innovative policy measures to manage the demand and supply of foreign exchange. If the current problem of oil theft is promptly corrected, we could expect a resumed inflow of crude oil receipts into the official reserves. This could foster gross stability in our foreign exchange market. On balance of payment, overall, our balance of payment is expected to remain positive in the short term. We have seen a recent boost in non-oil exports receipts to about $2.5 billion. Hoping that the poor performance of the oil sector reverses, especially as high crude prices is sustained by a potential elongation of the Russia-Ukraine war, we expect the current account balance to strengthen even further. Given the global and domestic headwinds we face as a nation and the volatility in the global environment, we have no option as leaders interested in the progress of our nation but to work very hard to support job creation by reviving agriculture and industrial activities in the country. Like we have always said many times, if we continue to support the growth of our smallholder farmers, you can only imagine the amount of wealth and jobs that will be created in our country. If we turn a blind eye to the opportunities provided by our enormous human and material resources, this could spell doom for our country. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, in concluding my remarks, please permit me to say that over the last 2 years, the global order and macroeconomic conditions have become increasingly challenging and distressfully tumultuous. This portends a huge downside risk for the proposed prospect of the Nigerian economy. We are thus reminded of the need to look inwards in developing policies that will correct the fundamental failures that we have undermined our economy. Accordingly, the CBN, guided by the best judgment and data, will continue to act in good faith to ensure the increased prosperity of our Nigerian economy. As we wind down this address this evening, I call on all of us to continue to put on our thinking caps and find imaginative solutions that will ensure a Nigeria of our dream, where balanced growth and shared prosperity is guaranteed for all Nigerians. I thank you all very sincerely for your attention, and thank you. God bless Nigeria.
Thank you very much, sir, for the keynote address.